Good morning, everyone. Just give you my background real quick. I'm a CPA. I was in public accounting for quite a while, and I've been doing this longer. And I've been with Crestwood just shy of 7 years now. I worked with FRX, the predecessor to this, and used to teach the Microsoft curriculum on it. And I've been involved with Management Reporter since it came out. So we're going to go over some tips and tricks and cover some different things today. This is kind of a little bit of an agenda of some of the things we're going to touch on. I'm going to show you how to build the dimensions, so the accounts or what you're using in the rows and the trees. And then we're going to touch on a few different topics such as row linking, how to do a quarter column, a rolling column, a dynamic column, side-by-side report, actual and forecasted. So with that, I'm going to go into Management Reporter, and I'm going to briefly, very quickly, just touch on security. So users are based off Active Directory, and then you have administrator, designer, generator, or viewer. Administrator and viewer do not need to be assigned company access. All other users do. And the only other thing is for anybody on GP, it depends on the adapter that you're on, the legacy adapter or the data mart. If it's the data mart, you don't have to do anything else. If it's the legacy, the first time you log into Management Reporter and try to access a company, it will need your GP login, and you can just click Save Credentials. And that's about as much as I'm going to touch on security today. We're also going to talk about how do I build a row from scratch. So I'm going to go to row, and I'm going to click New. And I always leave a description and a blank row first. If I go to Edit, Insert Rows from Dimensions, I have, with this demo data, I have division, account, department, and account category. Usually I'm going to use account. So if I said I want 1,000 through, say, 39.99, so like balance sheet accounts, it's going to automatically populate all the accounts. And then I can do a little bit of manipulation here and say, you know what, we're just going to take cash operating, and we're going to call this cash. And I can go from and do a range. So my last cash account looks like it was 1190. I just come in here and pop 1190 in here. And then I can highlight those rows and delete them. And then I'm going to do something called edit and renumber rows. This kind of keeps them in a little sync with some space. And then I can do more of this, but I'm going to show you, I believe I have a balance sheet one that I did, and this was how I built it. I'm going to call that up. So now you're going to see it formatted. So I started out with just a blank row definition, and then through inserting rows and deleting rows and doing a little bit of formatting, right? I threw a header in here that I centered and bolded. You have a full range of Microsoft fonts here. And then I put an underscore in and a total. This is how you total. So this says, give me from row 160 to row 370 and add them together. And then you'll see I left justified or liabilities. So this is the result of building what I built. So I'm going to close that. We'll close out of this and not save it. You also notice before I get out of here that it will put in the C if the normal balance is like a credit. Close out of that. And then I'm going to show you in a column the same type of concept. It's a little different. Reporting tree. It's a little different. I'm going to click on new. And there's my tree. And then I'm going to go to edit, insert reporting units from dimensions. Now this has everything here. I don't usually use account categories. We'll talk about those a bit later. I would use my division and my department. So and I also have the ability to restrict them, but I'm just going to go ahead and say okay. And you're going to see that we have built in our tree Division 0, and there's all the departments. Then there's admin. So there's my departments. Right, so that's building the tree that way. If I want to build the tree differently, I can come back to this and get rid of my account category again. And I could say, you know what? I don't want to go division department. I want to go department and then division. And you'll see the difference in this tree now. That's department 0 with all the divisions. And then each department. I could also just quickly, won't save that. I can quickly come back and build the tree and just say, you know what? I don't care about divisions. I just want a department tree. And there's a department tree. Now on anything, this is departments, but if for some reason I had 3 departments go together, I could come up here and I could insert a reporting unit. We're going to use our same company, and we'll say admin. Maybe there's 3 departments that I want together. I'm just calling them admin. It could be anything. And this, I can click and drag to pull these into that. I'm creating a virtual roll-up. The only thing is I do this in reverse order. Because that's what it winds up doing, is reversing them. So now I created a virtual roll-up called admin, and it's that simple. I can do that with anything. Obviously, it's a little more complex when you have many departments or divisions. So that's an example of using the dimensions to build something. And as I said, you can restrict them. We'll look at the department tree that they have by default. It really is just departments. If I wanted a consolidated tree, I don't have 2 companies of demo data, but this is how you could consolidate 2 different companies. All right, let's go back to my agenda for a minute. So we covered building the dimensions. Let's talk about, before we talk about row linking, let's talk about some columns and some different things and how they can affect what you see. So in a column definition, I can do a bunch of different things. So for example, here's a 3-year quarterly trend that they build. This is actually by quarter, and you'll see the quarters are achieved by ranging the periods, and then the years base -1, base -2. That's one thing we have. A rolling quarter. So this, I put fill for a space with 2 in column D here. I have my description. To the right of it, I have my year-to-date for the current year. And then you'll notice on the periods, base is the current period, base -1 is 1 month ago, base -2 is 2 months ago. And then I can have a rolling 12 months, which is just the same concept, except we have all the way from base to base -11. The other thing that I wanted to show you, I think that was the big thing. We'll look at some other stuff when we look at a couple of reports. Cash flow. That's what I wanted to touch on. So cash flow, in order to get Management Reporter to report on cash flow right, well, actually, you know what? I'm going to go to the actual report and just pull the cash flow open. And then I like to design from inside of here a lot. So I'm going to go to the cash flow column that we were just in, and you'll see first is by month. Then I'm using this non-printing in a calculation. It's my year-to-date beginning balance is what that stands for. Year-to-date beginning balance. Then I have my actual year-to-date, also not printing. And then I take and come up with my change. So I'm subtracting my year-to-date minus my beginning balance to come up with the change. So that's the column portion of it. The only thing difficult in the row is when we get down to the bottom here, my cash at the beginning of the period, you'll see I have a non-printing. They use account categories. We'll talk about that in a minute. But if this was a cash account, same thing. And I put a modifier on it, which says beginning balance. Then I do a calculation. This calculation says that my column B is the parameters of column B, row 1180, which is the beginning balance. And if you remember my column B, we'll go back to our cash flow report for a second and pull the column back up. My column B refers to year-to-date beginning balance. So if I go back to the row now, and then column E equals C 1180. So again, it's my beginning, but if I look at from my column, that's year-to-date beginning balance as well. If I go back to my row, then we just add all the stuff from above to it. And we have one more formula, which is our check to see if there's a difference. And what that is it's a year-to-date modifier. and then just the difference. So cash flow is not too bad. The column really was more of the key to that, and then just the modifiers. All right, and we're going to look at, I'm going to look at a general balance sheet. And I created this year, last year, so it's comparative. And these I actually built with accounts. So you can build with account categories. If I look at their balance sheet default, this is cash, short-term investments, accounts receivable. The only problem with doing it this way, I've seen people run into a lot of issues, is your categories really have to be set in your ERP. Whether it's SL or GP, it's really got to be set correctly in order for this to work. So I'm still a little bit old-fashioned. I'd rather have ranges of accounts. It's easier for me to troubleshoot when there's an issue. And then we talked about centering and justifying. I'm going to talk about one other thing. So we're going to run this report just because I want to see what it looks like. And I noticed a couple of things when I run this. One, their spacing's horrible there. And two, if I look at my total liabilities and shareholders' equity, they don't equal my assets. So this is in the library viewer. It also could be launched to a browser. So I'm going to go back to designer over here. Actually close out of this. Go back to my designer. And the first thing is easy. The formatting. I can just enter a couple of rows here. And tag them as description. And they'll give me blank spaces. And then maybe I want to enter one here. Same thing. Blank space. Like the DES. And then I have one more down here with the shareholders' equity. And then I'm going to edit renumber rows. So the CPA in me wants to keep everything similar. I'm going to save that file, close that. And you'll see if I rerun this, it only takes a minute. You'll see that my spacing issues are gone. I did all this deliberately. Now, how do I find what is wrong that my report doesn't balance? There's a couple of different things. On the report itself, there's this report duplicate accounts. So that could be one issue. And then under tools, there's actually missing account analysis. And if I look, my balance sheet's my first one, and I'm missing account 2300. So we're going to take the easy route and go see into my row if that's what my issue is. So I'm going to scroll down into the range where it should be. And I'm going to see that I have a range of 2310, which if I look is Chicago City Sales Tax Payable. And I'm going to change this to 2300. So that's now included in the range. And we were missing Illinois Sales Tax Payable. So we're going to accept that, save this, close out of this, and rerun our report. And scroll down just a little, and you'll see our report balances now. So the important thing to remember out of that are the two things: is my missing accounts analysis and my report duplicate accounts. The other thing that I did here is an income statement. And I just did a current month, a year to date, and I also did percents. So the base row calculation here, this is my current month divided by base row, and my percent for my year to date also divided by base row. How do I know what base row is? If I go into my report, I will see this CBR. This stands for change base row for percentage allocation. So 580, row code 580 is what I'm pointing at. That is my net revenue account. So that's my 100% line. So if I go look at this, if I go run this, and that's got a tree on it, I'm just running it for everything. We'll look at the top level only. And I'll notice when I get to my net revenue, it's 100%. Now, I would get a little fancier with the percents and stuff. This is just demo data, which is a little bit, doesn't have a lot of data in there. But I also notice that my total direct expenses are 100%, which doesn't make any sense to me. So if I go back and I look at my row definition, I will find another change base row. They used to do this. They used to have an FRX report that was similar to this, but I used to quiz people in class what was wrong with the report. Well, the report, somebody decided they wanted to look at direct expenses as a percentage of direct expenses, which is fine. That's what this says to do. The problem is I never come back here, and I'm going to sort of row. I never have another change base row that changes back to 580, so that the rest of the report is looking at 100% as the revenue line. So you can change these throughout. I'm going to delete that row, and I'm also going to delete the one over here and edit and renumber rows again, and then just save this, close this, run my report again. And you'll see now that my direct expenses are 67%. Right, things start looking a little better. Now, there's other things that we could do with reports that pertain to different types of things. So I'm going to look at a ledger tran detail and go to financial account and transaction for my income statement. And I haven't checked this, so I might have to do this off the balance sheet. It depends on their data, but I just want to give you an idea. So this is showing all the accounts because I listed them. And if I come into salaries and wages and drill down, you'll now see a bunch more information. What the heck is all this? So I'm going to show you with the column definition what I did here. So I put my description, which you always have to have. I put my account here, so I wanted my account codes. And then I lined up a bunch of attributes. And I broke the month down into debit and credit. And then if I look at my references, and I can see it up here under the fonts, the transaction date, originating master record ID, originating document number, originating transaction type, reference, transaction description. So I got a bunch of other information that ordinarily I wouldn't have. So you can get some information that you wouldn't ordinarily have. And I'm going to close this and actually close the report. And I'm going to look really quick for, they have a ledger list report. I don't know if this data is any good, but we'll take a quick look. The concept is that you can add attributes to the column and it changes your report. So they have all accounts listed here as an asterisk, and then you can drill down into them. So the same thing if I go into salaries and wages, except they put some headers here that I didn't. So right here's a date, journal number, voucher, posting type, ledger account, description, vendor name if there was. So it'll give you a general idea. All right, let's see how we're doing here. The other thing I want to talk about is row linking side by side and actual and forecasted. All right, so row linking, we're going to go back to our little income statement here. And I'm going to change back to my current and month to date. And I'm actually going to go into my row here. So row linking will allow me to have multiple columns. So where I just have column J right now, my link to the financial dimensions, if I click on this little icon, row links, and I say new, we're just going to focus on if the financial dimensions were different, maybe for another department. So I'm going to leave that as FT2, but right, I might call this Department 2. And I'm going to scroll right now and shrink this up a little bit. And I have Department 2. So there may be a reason why these are different, or it could even be different accounts. But I'm just going to copy and paste these over to this column right now. And I'm only going to do it for revenue and cost of goods. And before I get out of here, I want to show you one other thing that you can do with links. So if I click new for another link, it can be financial dimensions. It can come from an external worksheet or both. We're not going to get into external worksheets today, but there are ways to do that, and we can help you with that if you need some help. So I'm going to go ahead and save this like this. Now, in order for this to actually do this, I'm actually going to need to make a change to my tree. So I have my department tree, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say that the row definition these are all using are my income statement. And you notice it populated all of those automatically. My link, I just want it on these two departments right now. That's FD1, and we're going to make that FT2. This would get into more if it was the worksheets. And I'm going to save the tree and it wants to know what the rest of these are. That's another thing that this always has, this red circle with a white exclamation point. If I look at this, it will tell me what it doesn't like. And it's pretty good about that most of the time. So this is saying that it must have a financial dimension link. So we're going to make the rest of these FD1, and we're only going to have that one be FD2. But if just pretend these were all different, we would get different results. So I save the tree and close out of it. And then I have one more piece of work to do. I have to tell it, use row definition from reporting tree. And that, in a nutshell, is row linking. There's lots of different uses for it. I'm going to run those two departments only. Actually, I wanted to run a summary too, but admin's the only one that actually had anything in it. That's the problem of demo data. But you get the general idea. Again, it's really so that I can assign a branch level in a tree a different dimension link. So potentially different accounts. You cannot, I believe FRX used to allow you to have different row definitions in the tree. You're only allowed one, but it's virtually the same things accomplished with these other links. So I'm going to actually clear all of this and save this back to what it was and take my little checkbox off, which lets me get back out here. And then simply to get rid of this link, I just can come to Department 2 and delete it. And I'm back to my main row like it was. Well, you can do some pretty cool stuff with row linking. Time really doesn't permit us to get into more of that. The other thing that I want to definitely show you is how I can build a dynamic column and take advantage of some print controls. So for a dynamic column, I'm just going to say I want a new column. I am going to hit description, and I am going to tell it I want actual, and that's fine, and I want actual, and then I am going to actually say this is, we're going to try budget 4, and then I'm going to change my period to 1 and 1. And then we're going to do the same thing over here. And that's going to be period 2 and 2. And this is going to be budget 4. And then I'm going to assign some print controls to this. The print controls are conditional. I'm going to say print this actual column only if it's less than or equal to the base period. So the base period is when I'm running the report. So that's back on, if we go back to, I don't have that open, but we'll look at it. And then my budget is going to be only print this if it's greater than the base period. So right, I would just copy these two things over to here. And then I would probably have a month. And I'm just going to copy that across. And then I would have actual in my header. And I want actual to be from B to base. And then I would have forecasted here. And then I'm going to show you how I would spread all this, because I'm not going to keep this, and I have this prepared already. So if I go to columns, dynamic. So this is the column prepared. So I have all 12 months listed. If I go to the end here, I'm going to show you that I have a total forecasted. And then how I got the header to work. Again, this was spread from B to base. And this is base plus 1. So 1 past that period to Y, which is our last column. So let's go look at, I'm going to try to look at our income statement and swap that row out. To our dynamic. And I'm going to try another period. I'm going to try, that's where they have this demo data. So I'm going to try 2014. That's showing all actual too. So let me try one more thing. Let's do June of 2017. That actually will show it better. So I should have 6 months actual and 6 months forecasted. And there you go. So there's the forecast. Looks like this data is a little backwards, but you can get the general idea here. You can get a forecasted report with actuals and forecast, which is what I was driving at for you. And then let's see, side by side is one other thing I want to talk about. That used to be really hard. They made it really easy now. It is just a setting in the row definition. So I believe they have a side-by-side report. So this is a side-by-side balance sheet. And they look like they have a huge rounding difference. So assets on one side, liabilities on the other side. How they really accomplished this was in the row here. If I go down right below my asset section, there's a setting called column. It'll do a column break. So it shifts everything the other side. In FRX, this had to be done with a bunch of formulas. This is pretty easy. So we talked about most of the reports I wanted to talk about. I do want to talk about a couple of other things. Just distribution. This goes to the report library. And then you do have some Excel options here. They're a little bit tricky. They don't always work the best on the Excel options. Headers and footers. So this is an example of one of theirs. I'm going to see if I can grab one of my reports that I built. So we'll take our balance sheet. If I go to headers and footers, so that's the description of the company. This I probably wouldn't use. I'd insert auto text and my report description. And then they have period long. I don't know why Microsoft did this, but it includes the day of the week. So normally I just hit F2 here and back up and go to short. And then I will do things like usually put on here unaudited, and then maybe even underneath it for internal use only. And then I will normally come over here and put page number of how many pages. And then over here, I will usually do something like current system date. So that's the print system date, and then current system time. So how that works when you actually generate the report. There's the name of the company, balance sheet, the period, short date, doesn't include the day of the week, unaudited for internal use only. We come down to the bottom here, page 1 of 1, and there's my date and time. So that's just a little formatting. As long as we're looking at this window really quick. This is bad, obviously, and it tells you there's something wrong. This looks like it's tried to do a sort range, and this is talking about a rounding difference. Just for anyone that doesn't know what rounding is, it's accessed on the row definition. If I go to edit and rounding adjustment, I give it a counts. This report doesn't have any. Let me see if I can find one that does. You don't have to have it. I think it was their balance sheet that had it. If I come in here and go to edit, rounding adjustments, it's got certain row codes, and then it's got an adjustment limit. So it's going to kind of yelp at you if it's exceeds that limit, and that's what those warnings were. A couple of other things that I want to cover real quick, and then I want to leave some time for some questions, are report groups. So there are report groups available. Let me close out of that. This is an example of a report group. I can add any report to this. And then I said these were for this date. And these I'm going to generate, and they actually should bounce out to a browser. And you'll see it's queuing all of them and processing them. It should be up in a minute. And there it is. So this is the browser, and then I can bounce between these statements. So here's my income statement. I go back, my cash flow, and my balance sheet. I'm going to go back to my income statement for a second. This isn't the best data, but here's my reporting tree, right? If I wanted to go look at service and installation only, or any of these, here's my summary of all units. And then if I wanted to go something specific, like net income, it's got my totals where I can use a go-to bounce to them. Where's my gross profit? That took me up there. I can download this to Excel or the management report or viewer. So that was just a quick little on that. And then also, we are able to schedule reports. So I'm going to go look at the report scheduler real quick. So this is my group of reports that are scheduled. I could also schedule any individual report. It'll see all my reports out there. And then this is just who did this initially. And then you'll see this was set for March 7th at 11:29 a.m. and it was set for only one occurrence. I could set the number of times it runs. I could set an end date or no end date. I could set whether it runs daily, weekly, monthly, every weekday. So there is a scheduler that will run reports in here. I'm not going to save any changes to either one of those. Just going to touch on real quick one other thing back in reports. So I just want to touch on the detail level and the provisional, because we forget about that sometimes, and not everybody always remembers. But I have financial and account, financial account and transaction. So those are my details levels available. And then I have posted and unposted, or unposted only. I do have some people that use some of these to look at things at the end of a month, just to make sure, right, if I have entries out there, what those are, and then maybe I want to look at posted and unposted to see if I made those entries, what it changes things to. One other thing I want to touch on is settings. I know when MR first came out, I was like, what the heck did you guys do with the margins? They're under settings and other, whether the reports, portrait, or landscape, and your margins. There's some other things under here as well. The other thing is these calculation levels, and whether normally it defaults to perform row calc first. There are times where you have percents and other things where you need to perform the column calc first. I believe, let's go look at cash flow really quick, because I think that's one of them, and then we'll try and take some questions. So if I come into cash flow and go to settings, you'll see the column calcs have to be performed first. And that's because, again, we had these two non-printing rows. These need to calculate before the row did. So I threw a lot of stuff at you in a short period of time. Is just try to show you some things you can do, some basic, some extra, and hopefully it was worth your time. And I'm going to have Amber open it up to see if she has any questions from anybody.
Mike, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Okay, we do have a couple of questions. The first one is, does Management Reporter support SL project IDs?
I'll have to get back to him on that one, because I don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay.
It's been a while since I worked with Management Reporter and SL. I'm more on the GP side now, but I do know SL. I would have to see if that's one of those fields, but we can get back to them on that.
All right, I'll give him your contact information and pass that along. The next one is, can Management Reporter take an existing FRX catalog and import it? You gonna get back maybe on that one too? Same thing.
One existing one, no. Typically, they're all converted at once. There's a migration tool from FRX, and it overwrites whatever is already out there. So there is a migration wizard. If you wanted to do one report, you'd actually, I'm going to show you one other thing. I'm going to close out of all these things. If I come into company building blocks, this is where your reports are stored. A good backup when you make any kind of changes is to come in here and just make sure that you back everything up. And this actually will export to a drive, and to a file called .tbx. So I would say MR backup and maybe a date 081418 and just save that out there. And then if you brought that one report over, it's basically going to blow away your spec set. But if you, this building block group, it used to be called spec set, it would blow this away, but you might be able to import these back. But typically it's everything. Any other questions?
Yeah, we have one that says, does MR come with standard reports already built, or do we set them up from scratch when we start using MR?
There are some default reports. They're not typically going to match your stuff. Like, right, this is a balance sheet default. If I come in here, cash, well, it depends what your category cash is. So it does have some so that you can actually kind of have a cheat guide. We're also going to send out, I have two 40-page guides that I did a couple years ago, I think, and nothing's really changed that much from the perspective of setup. So I'm going to have Amber send those out to the attendees. One's kind of like a beginner guide, one's a little more advanced. So there also is, I will touch on really quick, a wizard here. This will get you started if you want to build some reports from scratch. And this is kind of self-explanatory, but there is a wizard here. Any other questions?
Okay, this question says, how would two groups of departments be shown along with company totals on an income statement?
Two groups of departments. So if you remember, there's the reporting tree. So this is a bunch of different departments. I have a summary level, which is everything. And then I have each individual department. So it depends if their accounts are the same or not. Remember when we talked about row linking, if I go back into my income statement row, right, are these accounts all the same? If these accounts are all the same, I would use a tree.
They are the same. Sorry, Mike, the accounts are the same.
Yeah, then I would use a tree to accomplish that. So on our report definition, I went back to income statement, I have that department tree assigned here. So that's why when I click generate, it brings up all these, which departments do I want to run, or do I want to run all of them? Any other questions?
Okay. There's a couple of questions, guys. If you don't hear your question, it's because I'm gonna have someone reach out to you. There's one more I think we can do right now, and that's can you run a profit and loss by calendar year and by grant year? Example, June 17 to May 18.
So physical, well, it's going to work off the GL. So it's based on your year in the GL. But could I set up other periods? I mean, here, I think this is a weekly column. Yeah, so this is for any given month. There may be some things you could do. You may need someone like me or one of the consultants to look at that question. So I don't think we can answer that right now, but typically this all works off of your GL. So if your GL's calendar year, that's what it's going to do. If it's fiscal year, that's what it's going to do.
Okay. And like I said, if I didn't ask your question out loud, it's only because we're going to reach out to you specifically. And I think that's pretty much it for us, Mike.
Thanks for watching. To learn more about our products, visit www.crestwood.com. Hope to see you there soon.